Good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us this evening. We are here to talk about what is land back, is the title of our podcast that we're doing this evening. Um, so I just wanted to start out in a traditional Haudenosaunee way and just give a small prayer in my languages, which are Cayuga and Mohawk. And I'll say the prayer and then I'll reiterate it in English. So nyawa goa sungwai diso sungwawi ganyohanyo ne deatenu erado ne ongwe soa eto no yuduhage ne ungwat negura. So in my languages, I said, thank you very much, Creator, for giving us things to be thankful for. It's a very powerful prayer that, my children, or I like to think that my children say every day as they wake up in the morning, just to be thankful and to start to obtain their good mind. And then I also said that I want to acknowledge the people today on this panel, people that impact our lives in good ways, people that impact our lives in very challenging ways sometimes. And we're taught that we acknowledge everybody because even those people that challenge our lives and challenge things in our lives, um, they're our greatest teachers. So we're to acknowledge them as well. So I'm just going to briefly show you this evening some wampum belts that are Haudenosaunee wampum belts and are relevant to a lot of territory up along the eco zone of the mixed wood plains. But with the KW or with the Kitchener Public Library hosting tonight, I wanted to make sure that they're relevant to the KW region as well. So the first one I'm going to show you is what we call the Hiawatha belt. And this is our Haudenosaunee Confederacy belt. I'm not going to explain the belts in depth tonight. Later on, after the new year, Dr. Svensson and I will be having a podcast that will be going through the Kitchener Public Library, and we're going to be talking more about treaties at that time. But I just wanted to share some with you. So this belt is called the Dish with One Spoon, and this belt is relative to our natural environment and all of the resources. And we have another belt here. It's called the Two-Row Wampum Belt. This belt is about the relationship between the Haudenosaunee people and the settlers that are here on this land with us now. And then we also have what's called the Ojibwe Friendship Belt, or the Haudenosaunee and Ojibwe Friendship Belt. And the ends of it shows these two squares, and those are about the relationship that between the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe people. So I just wanted to share those. And now we're going to just have a few words from the CEO of the KPL, the Kitchener Public Library, to welcome this event.
My name is Mary Chevreau, and I'm the CEO with the Kitchener Public Library. I would like to welcome and thank each of you for joining us this evening. We appreciate you continuing to join us online for our various programs until we are safe to return to our theater and programming rooms for our in-person events. We miss you dearly. I am proud to share that Kitchener Public Library quickly moved services and programs online to offer access to information in formats safe for our community. In fact, from April to November of this year, we've provided almost 1,000 programs to over 20,000 attendees and have implemented a number of services to ensure we are getting information and materials to you in a way that is comfortable for you. If you aren't ready to return to our branch, I invite you to sign up for an online library card and use our many digital services and resources, including ebooks, audiobooks, streaming movies and music, and access to many newspapers and magazines, all free to you through our subscriptions. And if you're looking for books but not comfortable browsing, please consider Curb and Carry. You can place your holds and we'll gather the material, contact you when the items are ready for pickup, and you can pick them up outside our library locations. If you don't know exactly what you want, we have Billy's book picks, educator picks, and kits, and discovery reads. For each of these, you tell us a little bit about what your reading preference, and we'll put together a surprise book kit. And most importantly, right now, there are no overdue fines. Enjoy your materials, and when you're ready and able to return the books on or around the due date, please use our outside book drop at any location. You don't have to come in. We'll isolate the books and then reshelve them for the next customer. We want to continue to support you and meet your learning and entertainment needs in a way that's most comfortable for you. And speaking of learning and programming, I am so pleased that the library is able to support tonight's discussion by hosting this talk live on YouTube and to remain on our channel for people to view later. I invite each of you who is looking to actively work on the unlearning of colonial values to follow tonight's panel, to use Kitchener Public Library's resources to assist you, and to look at our resource guide on our website at kpl.org/85queen. Again, thanks to each of you for being with us tonight. At this time, I would like to pass the screen over to our moderators and guest speakers, starting with Kelly Fran. Kelly Fran, welcome.
That was a very nice opening and welcoming from the CEO, Mary. And so at this time, I think what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and introduce, Stephen and I will introduce each other. I'm going to tell you about my friend, Doc Svensson, or Sven. He is an academic worker, community organizer in Kitchener-Waterloo, active on issues with climate change, food justice, and Indigenous sovereignty. He is a settler who comes from the traditional territory of the Spleegene people in the North Okanagan, where growing up as a fisher, farmer, and forager, he gained a deep appreciation for the land. Currently, he teaches, among other subjects, sociology of education, sociology of youth, environmental sociology, and research methods at Wilfrid Laurier University, where he is working on the problem of how to decolonize education in an institutional setting. So, Stephen and I will be your co-host this evening, moderators. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Svensson right now.
Thanks, Kelly Fran. I'm honored to be here and to be included in this event. It is seriously a great honor. It's even a greater honor to be among friends. I appreciate the Kitchener Public Library for putting this event on for us. But I mean, really, I'm here, I guess, to just I guess lend support is my role, and in lending support, I'd like to introduce Kelly, because Kelly has not had a chance to be introduced. So Kelly's Haudenosaunee from the Grand River Territory. As an Indigenous consultant, some highlights of the services she offers include professional development, facilitator, curriculum and program development, advisory support, speaker and performer at many powwows and other things that I've been at. Kelly Fran is now a Haudenosaunee researcher and has written the report Creating Our Way Forward, Recommendations for Improving Niagara Region Public Health and Emergency Services. Indigenous engagement was her first project. For the past 4 years, Kelly has been a part-time faculty of education member at Wilfrid Laurier University. She instructs Indigenous content in education for second-year teacher education candidates. Kelly Fran Davis is a leader in change, guided by the calls to action of Canada's Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And I have the honor of working with Kelly and having worked with Kelly for a number of years now, both at the university and outside the university. So thanks, Kelly, for asking me to join.
Yes, of course. Stephen, I wouldn't have asked anybody else, I don't think, at this time. I mean, we do a lot of reconciliation work, and I always appreciate and always have talked about the balance that we bring to the organizations and the institutions that we've worked in together, the balance with the male and the female energies and the settler and the indigenous or local Haudenosaunee, right? So, yeah, I thought of you right away. I thought of you when we started talking about the podcast at Kitchener Public Library because I would like to see more reconciliation work, like we're all doing our things separately, but we need to be able to come together and talk about what do we need to do as human beings, right? To make sure
Mhm.
that nothing like Indian residential schools ever happen to anybody ever again. So I'm honored that you accept it. I'm glad you're here. I think we're just going to talk a bit about some of that work that we've done together, right? I know, like, for me, I've invited you into my classroom at Wilfrid Laurier, and we've done the blanket exercise, which is like a historical, talking about historical events that have happened to the Indigenous populations within Canadian, the structure or construction of Canadian society, and bringing it all the way to current day TRC, your Truth and Reconciliation.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, I mean, and it's been great doing that work together. And I think we both struggle with the sorts of constraints that we're under at the institution at Wilfrid Laurier. And Wilfrid Laurier, to their credit, has taken this on, like many other institutions across the country. There is an indigenization strategy. I wouldn't say that there's a decolonization strategy because that's really difficult to do within an institution. But certainly, we're doing that work with the students, and to sort of to move them to a place to educate them on the history of colonization and its implications for the present day, and how people can act to change the situation, to be good accomplices or allies to Indigenous folks and others. And that work is really great, and it's limited though with the university, and this is sort of the frustration that we always end up bumping up against. And so at a certain point, it's sort of up to the individual to leave that university sphere and do things in the community, and do things on the ground. And I think, that's what we're here to talk about tonight.
absolutely. And we've done, yeah, different things. You've done many great things with a variety of Indigenous folks around reconciliation, around, like we had talked about in your bio, the climate change and around community gardening and all that great stuff. So I never knew that was his mother. But, anyways, it's a whole nother conversation. But yeah, I think that we'll continue to do a lot of great work together. I'm really excited about the podcast that we started before COVID, and recording more of those episodes and to see how it goes. And I mean, for myself, and I think I can speak for you too, Stephen, to say that we're doing this work because, like you said, we're want to educate people. We want people to know the true history. And we also want to be able to, provide or open doors for people to say, hey, what can we do? Like, because everybody's kind of struggling. I would say Indigenous and non-Indigenous people as well, to try to figure out how do we reconcile the wrongs of the past, right, of this country, and how do we decolonize, or how do we bridge value systems or something. Like, we don't know what that is, but we're definitely striving towards it. So I'm excited to see more work that we do. But right now, I'm more excited to hear your introduction of Amy Smoke.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just briefly, at a certain point, again, we're limited in the university with what we can do, but there's examples outside the university, and I'm really honored to have had Amy come in on several occasions to speak to the class in different capacities, to share her experience, and her wisdom and her knowledge of what that fight is on the ground. And so I'm honored to introduce Amy, as a land defender and a friend. Amy Smoke is Mohawk Nation Turtle Clan from the Six Nations of the Grand River. Amy is a Two-Spirit Indigiqueer parent, public speaker, and community organizer. They've graduated from Conestoga College General Arts and Science, University of Waterloo with a BA and BSW, as well as Wilfrid Laurier University with a Master's in Indigenous Social Work. Amy has won several awards for social justice and leadership, and is one of the founders and organizers of I'm not even, I'm embarrassed that I'm not going to say this correctly. Oshe Kenotete Land Back Camp, or Land Back, what is known for we that are settlers as Land Back Camp. Their most recent victory, with the support of others in the community, has been encouraging the city of Waterloo to get them moving and to act to create a 4-person dedicated staff team to provide expertise on Indigenous initiatives, anti-racism, accessibility, and equity. And they've made some other, inroads as well with the city of Kitchener, which are amazing. So all the credit to you, Amy, and all the people that have worked with you to bring this about. And thank you.
Yo, Noah, thank you so much. Yeah, it's been a long, 170 days I think we're on. And it's OC Gangyu Hadaje. I don't think anybody gets it right, but it actually means Willow River, which is what we would call the Grand River before it was renamed by settlers. So Sego Sawagwego, Amy Yonya, Skinyanke Hagani. I am Mohawk Nation Turtle Clan from the Six Nations of the Grand River. I've lived in Kitchener-Waterloo my entire life. So much of the work that I have done here is for urban First Nations, Métis, and Inuit folks, youth in particular. And what I have thoroughly enjoyed and was pleasantly surprised by is Land Back Camp was founded by Two-Spirit, Indigiqueer, gender diverse folks, femme folks, Tereshar Trent, Sean Johnston, Hannah Anns, Pam, Ali, all of the folks that are members of the camp are queer. We are gender diverse or trans or non-binary. And I think that's also one of the things that makes us a little bit different from any of the other land reclamation or Indigenous groups on the ground working in their own spaces, is that we are Two-Spirit and queer led. We are mostly youth, also pleasantly surprised by the youth that showed up. In June, we put up the teepee in Victoria Park, and after, decades, hundreds of years, but in particular, the mounting and growing frustration and disappointment and despair at not having access to our own lands here in the KW region. Local community members would rent the pavilion in Victoria Park for public gatherings. We are one of the only urban spaces, in Southern Ontario that does not have a friendship center. We do not have a gathering space. So Victoria Park was a space that is urban and accessible, but not free for us to gather, to be on the land, to have a fire, to be ourselves, and to gather for feast and ceremony. So a number of us put up a teepee, and youth began to show up. Folks that had spent their entire lives in care. As I said, some trans folks, non-binary folks, and settler accomplices to do what they could, to ask us what they could do, to spend time with us. The youth have reconnected to land, language, ceremony, the music. We have done so many great things, and both Sean Johnston and I, the other current organizer here, have been so, amazed and honored and humbled to be able to pass the mic, more or less, to the youth in our communities. They are the leaders. We do these things for them. They should have those voices. They should have those platforms, the space to tell us what they want, to tell us what they need. So we spent 122 days in Victoria Park working alongside the city of Kitchener. Weekly meetings established after about the 10th week in order to talk about what that looks like, accessing our own lands for free. Staff in City Hall spaces to accurately represent, and including the Black community members as well, non-white racialized community members in Kitchener-Waterloo. None of these City Hall spaces accurately represent any of those folks. So we wanted staff position, paid, permanent, full-time, with benefits, all of those things, not advisory, honorariums, not circles, but actual jobs in those spaces to start to do the work with those settler folks to guide them. When we started, not one of the city councilors or staff could tell us a single call to action from the 94 that actually said, we call upon the municipalities. That is their job. That is the space that they run. They could not tell us, like Fran showed the wampums, they couldn't tell us what treaty lands they were living on. They couldn't tell us the names of the folks who live here and have historically been here. So we walked them all through that initial education and brought them to a place where in Kitchener, they are hiring a 5 staff team. And now in Waterloo, along the same lines, a 4-person team. And after, it's been how many days here? 44 days here, 45 days here. We have seen the results of that work as well play out in Waterloo City Council just on Monday night. So it was a very different idea than a land claim. I'm from, Six Nations. I would love all of it to go back to Six Nations, all of it. But we, in working alongside the leaders of these spaces, we're able to come to these types of decisions, these types of conversations, these types of consultations, and advising them in a good way. We started things with feasts. We started things with tobacco. We burned our sacred fire for every single day that we were in Victoria Park. And we will now have permanent fire spaces in both Victoria and Waterloo Park. Construction will begin next year after consultation with the rest of the communities. Sean and I have said many times, we do not speak for the entire First Nations, Métis, and Inuit populations here in Kitchener-Waterloo. That needs to be bigger than us, bigger conversations with the rest of the community members. But we'll finally be able to gather on our own lands for free and have fire and have ceremony, do the work that we need to do for our community members. We've witnessed some great things. Some folks hearing their language for the first time, some folks singing for the first time, some folks making their very first drum, and some folks saying, I'm a queer person for the very first time. So all of these things together, we started to see, that there is a need for these types of spaces. I personally have not gone home. I'm the only camp member that has never slept at home since this has started. You can see that in Waterloo Park, we've moved to a trailer. Big thank you to all of the GoFundMe donations who have helped to keep us warm for as long as we've been here. And it has transformed my life. It has transformed my daughter's life, my 6-year-old, being on the land-based education, the other camp members' gifts in educating my child on so many of the things that they don't get in class. Look, there's your cousin.
Hello.
Hi, Sky.
So, we have shown the world what can happen when Indigenous folks reconnect to the land, spend that time on the land. I know every nook and cranny of both Victoria Park and Waterloo Park now because of the spaces that I'm in, because of the work that we've been doing. And we are moving forward on trying to, COVID aside, bring that type of programming to these types of spaces for free whenever we need to gather, whenever we need to have a fire on our own lands. So I don't know how long I've talked, but I don't know if that's it's enough for what you guys want to talk about. Land back it's a huge conversation, right? And it looks different all across Turtle Island. It's not just demanding Indigenous lands be returned to Indigenous hands. It's about affordable and adequate housing. It's about climate justice and Indigenous sovereignty and Black liberation tied up together. It's about social justice issues. It's about all of those things, but it plays out very differently in very different contexts. You know, like Skylar will tell you, the mayor in Haldeman over there, Mr. Hewitt, is probably not as easy to work with as the mayors here in Kitchener-Waterloo. We've had some very good conversations. We've had some tears in some of our spaces, and the need and the want and the desire to do better here in Kitchener-Waterloo. And that plays out very differently, in 1492 Landback Lane, quite obviously.
Well, thank you, Amy. I could just listen to you all night. You got so much great things to say. I could just come over there and hug little Sky. I haven't seen her in so long. But yeah, I would thank you so much for that. And we're going to jump back into discussion after we give Skylar a few minutes. I just want to introduce Skylar and want to hear what he has to say about what is land back. But I'm going to introduce Skylar. Skylar Williams. He is a husband, a father, Haudenosaunee land defender, the current spokesperson for 1492 Landback Lane at Six Nations, a decorated boxer, and a third-generation ironworker. Skylar is a Haudenosaunee land defender because he is a father, and it is important to him that his children and future generations do not have to continue to fight to stop the development of our Haudenosaunee territory. He is over the top thankful for his amazing wife. She is amazing. I know her. She's beautiful. That stands by his side and inspires all of their daughters to be proud Haudenosaunee women. Skylar has been a land defender for the better part of his life. He supported Gunestado, the protected place, Camp Ipperwash, where Dudley George was killed by the OPP, Stand-in Rock Indian Reservation, the Dakota Access Pipeline Resilience, Tyendinaga's protest effort to put pressure on the federal government to look into missing and murdered Indigenous women, and more recently, Tyendinaga's rail blockade in support of the relatives on the West Coast, the Wet'suwet'en, which Skylar has also supported directly. He is a Mohawk Wolf Clan warrior from the Six Nations of the Grand River Territory. So I'm going to turn the mic over to Skylar at this time, and he's going to tell us what land back is.
How are you, Fred? Welcome to Landback Lane, everybody. This is 1492 Landback Lane, and this is the very front. I don't know if you can see in the background there the bus and the hole, the car on a bus and a hole on the road here. And so I think there's a lot of kind of misconceptions that get kind of made about the reasons for barricades and the movement, I guess, around us being called terrorists and violent and all of these. Amy had talked about a little bit about the relationship with the mayor, and the mayor here, Amy, is not exactly my biggest fan, and has called for the arrest of not only myself but my family, and applauded the OPP for their efforts in arresting when my wife was arrested, but also the Haldimand County Police Services Board has came out with like a 5-page position paper and document that was encouraging for the OPP to take very violent, very direct action to end the occupation at Mackenzie Meadows, which is now 1492 Landback Lane. And so I think we are on day 145. And so over the last 145 days, we've seen on day 17, 100 OPP come in to try and arrest. I think it was nine of us that were arrested that day on site. And so this was a massive OPP operation that seen, OPP firing rubber bullets and tasering people and dragging women off our lands, one that was arrested non-native girl that was there just videotaping and had her phone out and was taping the recording what was happening, and this OPP officer was quite big, picked her right up, slammed her to the ground, and proceeded to arrest her. And so when we talk about these movements and like the amount of racism that comes out of people, the amount of and I know at Landback Captain Kitchener and Waterloo, they've had very similar experiences with the racism. And so I mean, these are things that are somewhat typical for us whenever we're doing these things, to see the courts come out with injunctions and these big dollar figure developments that are happening, whether they're pipelines or around here, because again, this is Southern Ontario. This is Southern Ontario, where a quarter of the entire country lives. And so to see Ontario come out with the places to grow at, which Doug Ford was a big pusher of, and he put all of the development that is going to go on in Southern Ontario and encouraged that development and provided financial help to developers that were going to be developing in this places to grow area. And if you take that map and you put it right over our traditional territory of the Haldimand Tract, it almost lines up quite perfectly. And so that Places to Grow Act, that racist bit of legislation that is going to see all of our 95% of what is supposed to be ours further developed, is absolutely infuriating to myself and to many, many, many other Haudenosaunee people. And so for us to make the stand that we have, and to see governments continue to drag their feet and not come to the table with adequate consultation, without trying to push these developments ahead without consent. And one of the things that we keep on kind of talking about is that our communities, and I don't care where you are, these nations have been systematically divided by elected councils, by residential school, by over incarceration of Indigenous people, by missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. Like, all of these things have created these divides in our community that have made these stands that Indigenous people are making from coast to coast very, very difficult. And so for when our community comes together to say absolutely not, we will not abide a massive 1,400 home development rolling up on the very doorstep of our community, that needs to be respected. And the federal and provincial crown teams need to be getting to that table. And I mean on day 2 or 3, not on day 145. And so to see after 145 days, the consistent feet dragging by the federal and provincial governments is quite despicable, and is leaves only the OPP to be the arm of the government, the arm of the crown, to be able to deal with us. And so when we talk about the honor of the crown and what that means to Haudenosaunee people, Haudenosaunee people, like many other, are treaty people and have made long-lasting agreements with the crown. And you talked about the Turo and for here on the Grand River, the Haldimand Proclamation, which deeds this entire tract of land 6 miles on either side of the Grand River from the mouth to the source. It is a massive tract of land in the middle of Southern Ontario. Like, our people weren't given this spot of land we're given this spot of land for our allyship with the British during the Revolution. And so when we were put here, this was not just because it was a nice tract of land that our people wanted, but also it was a military point for us. It was militarily advantageous for us to be here, because now we were a day's ride from Fort Niagara or Fort Detroit or Fort York, and like this is why we were here. so that we could continue in that allyship with the Crown. And so for the Crown now, these many years later, come back and dishonor themselves by letting the OPP be that arm of consultation. Because the thing is, with the OPP, they only have one language, and that is one of violence. Those guns on their hips and those quite a bit bigger guns that they carry in the cars with them are not meant for us to be able to have those peaceful negotiations, to enter into that dialogue that I think Haudenosaunee people have been quite renowned for. Our ability to be able to sit, to counsel, to have those discussions, regardless of how hard they are, to be able to have that discussion, regardless of how difficult those discussions may be. And so for us now to have these barricades up and to have roads dug up, like regardless of whether or not I personally agree or disagree with the barricades being up, the barricades are up because the OPP have continued on several occasions now to shoot at our people. And so when our people have said absolutely no to these developments, and these developments will not continue, certainly not without consultation, certainly not without our consent. And so for us now, I'd like to open that into the discussion part. But I really want to thank Steve and Fran for putting this on and asking me to be a part of this, because you guys are amazing. And don't let Steve fool you with the gray beard there. He packs a mean left hook, I hear.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for that, Skylar. I'm so honored that you could join us tonight. I'm, of course, one of your biggest fans, is our Haudenosaunee Land Defenders at 1492 Landback Lane. What came to my mind when you were talking, Skylar, was about, you know, it's you and the young people there that are defending what is supposed to be our traditional territory. And in that, like you had talked about, it was the British had kind of given us this piece of land because of our allyship with them, and it was about six, like you had said, 6 miles on each side of the Grand River that was supposed to be protected land from any settlement so that we could maintain our traditional way of life, right? And there's so much education that needs to happen, right? And the way, you talked about a lot of different things. And I want to kind of hear from Stephen too, some of the things that he heard you talk about. But the one thing for sure I wanted to mention too was that, you know, um, the divisions that you talked about, that colonization and the current, government, federal, provincial, regional, the mayors, the different um, divisions that are created, with the biggest division that we're faced with right now at Six Nations and have been for a very long time since 1924 is the band council and our traditional governance, right? And I just wanted for people to know that, the band council is represented and supported by less than 7% of our population at Six Nations.
4% in the last election.
Less than 5%. Okay, sorry. But yeah, I just wanted everybody to know that, because that is, and the reason for that is because that is a branch of the Canadian government. Our band council members, chief and council members, are actually Canadian government employees. And so there's a big conflict of interest when you're talking, like you mentioned, about consultation. Consulting with their own employees is not consultation. So thank you for pointing that out. So, Stephen, I just wanted to hear kind of something that, stuck out for you, or something you wanted to elaborate as Amy and Skylar were talking.
Yeah, I mean, what sort of jumps out at me right away is the failure, the ongoing failure of governments at all different levels to negotiate in good faith with First Peoples all across Turtle Island, whether that be in the United States or Canada, and certainly where I come from in so-called British Columbia, at that point there weren't even the territory that I grew up on, which was part of this Splijeen people, the southernmost group of the Secwepemc, or what would have known in English as the Shuswap. They didn't even sign treaties at that point. They just went in there and just pushed people onto marginal land, and the patience with which Indigenous peoples all across so-called Canada have shown in dealing with the Crown and wanting redress is incredible. And we're at the point now where obviously with what's going on at Land Back Camp in Kitchener Waterloo, and then down at 1492 Land Back Lane, we can look at Wet'suwet'en too, and then tie into Nega. We're at the end of this, and I think as Canadians, settler Canadians, we're more and more sympathetic to the situation under which Indigenous peoples have had to labor for so long. And, really, again, it's a failure of the Crown to negotiate in good faith on agreements that they had made in the past. And that's why it's so important that people kind of reclaim what that colonial history actually was. And I guess for you, Skylar, maybe it might be interesting to talk a little bit more about that failure of the Crown, and then also as myself as somebody who wants to help, to be an accomplice, what are the best ways that we can do that?
And I think I've been asked that question a couple of times, around what does allyship look like? And for me anyway, I think I really take the stance of I don't know what anybody's capacity is, and who am I to tell anybody what their capacity is, whether you got kids, whether you this job, or the things in your life that that you deem important. And so when it comes to capacity, for some folks that means donating $20 to the GoFundMe account, the GoFundMe campaign for legal defense. For others, that's cooking a hot plate of food and bringing that down. And then for other people that are willing to, they come down and they might spend the day, or for some the weekend. For others, it's the week, the month, and for a couple of the are really amazing allies that have been able to withstand the heat of the 40 degrees in the summertime to the minus 10 with the wind chill in the evenings now. Like this is they've stood by us day in and day out for the last 145 days. So I can't say enough about how grateful I am to those people. But yeah, it's an issue of capacity, and whatever you feel is holding up the treaty responsibilities of your nation, and whatever you can do to uphold those treaties and hold your governments accountable for their lack of leadership in being accountable to those treaties is something that is on each person.
Yeah, I agree, Skylar. Yeah, like I always talk about that too, is like, what are our capacities? What do we have? Um, what do we know we can do to help improve the future for all children, right? And Amy talked a lot about, the land back camp that's at Waterloo Park now, and started at the Victoria Park in Kitchener. It is so important. The most important thing is the connection to the land, right? And for Indigenous people, I want to say across North America and around the world, the connection to the land is it's a it's a human right, that we have access to land, that we can go and, pick some wild strawberries or some blueberries in the bush or something, like, and that's how just people in general, we all started out, right? We all started out connected to the land. And I think if when we're talking about allyship, or we're talking about what we can do to support these movements, whether they're at the park or at, Land Back Lane or a stop in a pipeline or whatever it is, that we can all come to the same common ground that, what, we all have a responsibility to all of our children, that they have a natural environment to thrive from. And that, so then we can start to think about, we got to really think about these issues of climate change. Like, this is not just an indigenous issue, this is a humanity issue, right? Because, like Haudenosaunee philosophy, when we talk about, our Ganyo, our Thanksgiving address, our words that come before all else, it's our connection, our spiritual connection to our natural environment, our appreciation for everything that our natural environment does for us. And I've been taught so many times that, of the four families of this earth, us human beings, we are the most pitiful because we rely on the animal kingdom and the mineral life and the plant life to sustain us. And you know what? All three of those other families can survive without us. That's why we're called pitiful. The human race is pitiful. And we need to use that language or that understanding to keep us humble, because that is the biggest problem I see in this, whole climate change and, global warming, all these issues around our environment, is it's the human race that's doing this. And we need to, jump on the bandwagon or whatever it is and say, yeah, we need to have access to a natural environment. We can see looking at stats across the country with healthcare and in the healthcare system and public health and all these different stats, and research that's been done with, people's health. You have way more health issues in the big cities that are covered in concrete, than you do in rural areas. So that's just my rant about, what land back is and why it's important. It's so darn important for everybody. And it's not just important for, the indigenous people, but what I want to say to people, and then I'm going to let anybody else talk. But what I want to say is, you know, the indigenous people have a platform that all of us can grow from. We have that foundation that our ancestors left us, and that's those treaties, right? And that's our philosophies and our understanding of our connection to the land that Amy was talking about. So I just wanted to put that out there to everybody, that we indigenous people have this platform, so let's all jump on it together and let's see what we can do, right, to better our future. Amy, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, no, I hit the mic, but yeah, no, I mean, I completely agree, right? The relationship that we have with the land, right? Foundational to our well-being, our mental health, our spirituality, all of those things. I'm like in Mohawk, right? When we speak of like Yeti Nistaha Owanja, it's she to us who sustains us. It's about the relationship of the Mother Earth to us, who gives us everything, right? Like you said, like human beings, I think, are the one creature on the planet that has forgotten its original instructions, right? Revitalizing and remembering and reclaiming the relationship that we have. Like, forget about the commodification of water. Like, water is a spirit, Mother Earth is a spirit that gives us so much, and we just take and we take and we take, and we're not giving anything back. And having that access back, for all human beings, yes, should be foundational. It should be at the forefront. Like, the ultimate solution to all of the things is land back, climate justice, right? Indigenous sovereignty, Black liberation, environmental issues, all of those things. For me, the ultimate solution is return the land. And like, not just symbolically. We do have those perspectives, that worldview, that relationship with all of those things. We walked softly on Mother Earth prior to colonization. And look what's happened in 500 years, right? So we need to go back, right? 1491, and remember what we were doing then and walk in those good ways again. Yeah, I agree with all the things.
Yeah, 1491, the last good year, right?
Right?
So, I mean, this was the thing, right? Is when we talk about progress, and covering everything in concrete and asphalt in the name of progress. And I think this is like that connection to the land that is something that is deeply spiritual for everybody, for Indigenous folks, for certainly Haudenosaunee people who, our creation story talks about being made from this clay. This earth that we're standing on is part of who we are. Like, it is fundamental to who we are as Haudenosaunee people and that connection to it. And so for us to see progress as being those deer that we're seeing come back to the land here, those foxes and those animals that are starting to come back. You shut these roads down and all of a sudden, the deer aren't afraid to come out of the bush anymore. You shut these roads down and you start to take over these developments, and you see all of the animals come up to the edge of where the land has been scraped of every tree and every shrub, every blade of grass, everything that makes it beautiful, everything that makes Mother Earth her. And you see all of that scraped away to this, and we all kind of jokingly have called it through the summer as being a desert, because there isn't any life there anymore. There was everything that was living, everything that was beautiful that was once there is now gone. And so for us to be able to let Mother Nature do her work and bring that back. And so if our community decides that there's going to be nothing done with it, and there's not going to be developed, it's not going to be, there's not going to be agriculture there, and it's just going to be left to be wild. That is absolutely an amazing thing, because 15 years ago, when we took back Gunestado, it still remains the exact same way that it was. Only Mother Nature has had 15 years now to start growing trees, to start to rebuild that topsoil. So now that it is a place where, all of those animals that we talk about, that we have a spiritual connection with, have all come back to. And so now to see this development right directly across the road from where myself spent a year of my life in the bush there, 7 months in jail to make sure that Gunestado came back to Six Nations. And so for us to be able to decide or not decide what to do with it and just let Mother Nature do her work, because that's the thing, is it is gradual work that she does, and she will eventually take it all back. And so for us to say that this is about land back, this isn't just land for Haudenosaunee people to be able to decide with what they're going to do with it. It might be just to let Mother Nature do with it what she wants.
Yes, thank you so much for those great words, Skylar, and those great reminders, right? That, just because we're having the land back, or, it's not, it's up to us what we're going to do with that land. If we're just going to let Mother Nature, replenish herself there so that we can start to live that traditional way again and to access some of those natural resources, well, then so be it. That's what we would like to do. Then that's what we want to do. Then that's what we decide, and that's what we're going to do. Um, so I'm mindful that we just have a couple minutes left. So I want to give Stephen a few moments to, reflect a bit on anything that we've been talking about this evening, and then we'll close out.
Yeah, I'm kind of mindful about saying too much. I mean, thank you both Skylar and Amy for your words, and sobering words. Where do we go from here? How do we support? How do we fulfill as settlers for myself responsibility? And just to, well, both you folks know that I'm here for you in whatever capacity I can. I can support you, and that, and that's all I really wanted to say. And we as settler Canadians, we need to support this land back movement all across Turtle Island. It's important, as for all the reasons that have been said tonight. That's really all I have to say, Fran.
Oh, thank you so much. I want to thank you, Amy and Skylar, so much for joining Stephen and I. And thank you, Stephen, again for joining us with this event through the Kitchener Public Library. That very important discussions that have happened here tonight and will continue to happen on Stephen and I's podcast. And we hope to have you back again one time when we get our episodes rolling there, and just to talk about more about, all these traditional teachings, because that's what I heard tonight. I heard those words of some of our old people, that I heard when I was growing up. I'm not going to say how old I am, but I'm definitely older than you two. Um, but I just want to say thank you. And I just want to close with a very short prayer again, just that small prayer of giving thanks for having things to be thankful for. So, Nyawagoa Sungwaindiso Sungwawi Kanyohanyo. Thank you all for joining us. And thank everybody that joined us on YouTube. You could have been anywhere this evening, but you were here with us talking about land back. So thank you all very much and have a good night.
Yo, nyawa, nyawa, sagoyo. Ona.
Ona.